I got this entire bundle of old PCs for free, and most people would throw them out. But I want to see if I can turn one into a legit entry-level gaming PC. Even the flies love these PCs.
Update, I've had endless problems with this build. Watch me slowly lose my mind. Back to you, delusional Corey.
Do you think it still works? After looking at the PCs, I have narrowed it down to 2 PCs, both AM3 systems, which means we're gonna have a half decent CPU inside. But I think I'm gonna go with this one because it seems to be a little more modern. I think that by adding an SSD and a graphics card, it could make for a nice budget entry-level PC. Well, we can all see that this PC is a load of junk with dust everywhere. However, we are gonna bring it back to life, swap out the hard drive for an SSD to speed this PC up, and swap out the GPU for something more capable so we can play some entry-level games such as Rocket League or Fortnite. But first of all, we have to clean the PC. Let's check out the montage. Honestly, the parts don't look too bad at all. A lot of dust coverage, but I think that that will come off quite easily. But this system is very, very old. Firstly, if we're to make this a gaming PC, this GPU, it's gonna need an upgrade. But I am gonna clean it up anyway because we will be using this GPU in a different video. Secondly, a 1 terabyte hard drive, it's not enough. We're gonna upgrade to an SSD. I'll probably keep the hard drive for a bit of extra storage, but an SSD will speed up this system significantly. And I don't exactly know what CPU we have. However, if we do need to upgrade the CPU, I do have spares, but I want to try and keep this CPU in the system. And for the RAM, we do have 8 gigabytes running at 1333 megahertz. I will also say that if we do upgrade the GPU, we're probably going to have to upgrade the power supply because this GPU didn't require external power, and we don't have any power connectors coming from the power supply to power the GPU. So that's one thing to keep in mind, but we'll wait until we cross that step. Tell Microsoft to bugger off and get yourself Windows 11 CD keys for 1/10 of the price. Whokeys have a big sale on, and you can use my code IFR25 to get 25% off with loads of payment methods. Copy your code and paste it here to activate. You can even grab Office for your PC for dirt cheap. Don't pay a reoccurring subscription. Use code IFR25 for 25% off. Links are in the description. All Whokeys software products are on sale right now. All right, guys, everything's cleaned up, but we have a couple of issues to discuss. Number one, this GPU is not going to handle it. So we actually have a choice of 2 GPUs. I had a spare 1060 laying around, but I also had a spare GTX 760. I'm choosing the GTX 760, and there's a good reason for it. It turns out the CPU, while I was hoping for the higher end FX CPU, it's actually an FX 4100. So if I was to go ahead and put a GTX 1060 in the system, there'll be a whole load of bottlenecking. The GTX 760 should have no issue in this system. However, I'm just worried about FPS. As long as I can hit that 60 FPS mark in 1080p, I will be happy. Now, this system was free, so worst case, if I can't hit 60 FPS with this system, then I will swap to the 1060. We will experience some bottlenecking, but it's a free system anyway, who cares? With the GPU swap comes some power supply issues. This power supply doesn't actually have extra headers to power a GPU, so we do have to do a power supply swap as well. This is the Corsair VS650. I had one of those spare as well, so we will be chucking this into the system. Last but not least, we want this system to perform fast. Another big bottleneck for this system is the hard drive. So we are going to be throwing in an SSD with Windows installed on it just to speed the whole system up. Now, I still don't know if this system works yet, so we are going to be setting up a test bench right now. Let's make sure all the parts work before we put it inside the case. I think that's probably the smartest thing to do. This computer's been so weird right now. I have the hard drive plugged in. The hard drive seems to be able to get to this level of Windows. I'm just going through a system restore at the moment. Doesn't seem to be able to work with the SSDs. I get to a black screen with a blinking cursor. I've tried multiple SSDs, cannot get it to show anything on the screen. Worst of all, the keyboard is not responding either. When I try and go into the BIOS, I'm doing delete, and you can see that sometimes the lights, they flicker. It's almost like the keyboard's not getting enough power or something like that. There's some weird stuff going on with this system, but we are trying to narrow it down. Yeah, something is real wrong with this system, guys. What we have done is we have gotten to this screen. Our keyboard is not responding. However, when I clear the CMOS and I reset the CLRTC button, we're able to get through. And when we have the SSD on, this is the screen that we eventually get to. There's the blinking cursor at the top there. Now, I did manage to get into the BIOS once because the first time that I reset the CMOS, the keyboard does work with the motherboard, which means either there's something faulty going on with the BIOS and the settings with the USB, or the USB controller is pretty much dying. So what I want to try and do is see if I can update the BIOS, because for some reason, even when I choose the SSD as boot priority in the BIOS, I can never get to Windows, and I know Windows is on it. However, I'm able to get to Windows with the hard drive, but then the keyboard's not working. So there's something going on with the USB. It's so frustrating. I finally get into the BIOS because the keyboard starts to work, and then the one time I do get into the BIOS, now the USBs aren't working for the BIOS upgrade. I've tried multiple USBs, multiple different ports. It's so hard to get USB to work. Honestly, I think this motherboard is a lost cause. The USB controller's gone. It's not even detecting any of the USBs here to update the BIOS, so I don't think we're gonna have any luck with this motherboard. I do have a solution though, as long as it works. This was given to me in a recent deal, so purchased as not working / incomplete. Let's just hope that it was incomplete and it is working. It's an i5 2500K, 8 gigs of RAM. We're not gonna worry about the graphics card. Likely needs coin battery and firmware. I mean, hopefully this works. It needs a little bit of a clean, which I'll do, but let's test it out first. And it's definitely gonna need a big clean. I mean, look at the mold and stuff growing on it. What is that? That's disgusting. Yeah, I mean, look at that, straight to Windows. I knew it wasn't a broken SSD or anything like that, The new motherboard's working perfectly. In fact, it's a bit of an upgrade for the CPU. Now, we actually got this motherboard combo with another deal, so it was technically free. He chucked it in because he had no use for it. He actually thought it was broken or missing parts, and he didn't have the money to go and buy extra parts. So I'm glad that it works. I am a little bummed out that the other motherboard didn't work because I would have liked to have tested that CPU. But we got the PC for free anyway, so we haven't really lost out on anything. And we've still gained CPU, RAM, hard drive, a case, all the other parts that are left over. It's just the motherboard that's dead, plus another GPU as well. But at least this is working, so we'll get this in the system and we'll test out the performance of this PC. Oh, and that's after a quick clean because that mold isn't really meant to be in PCs. Well guys, this just keeps getting better. This motherboard is ATX size and does not fit in the original case. If I go ahead and I ditch the case for a different case, that means that pretty much we're not using any of the original parts, and that's not what I wanted for this video. I was trying to use some of the other components in the other builds, but they're not cross-compatible. They're all different platforms. There's one thing that I have left. I really want this platform to work. When I get into Windows, I was locked out because it required a password to get in. The USB does work when I get into Windows. The problem is I can't load Windows from that system. So what I am thinking is I'm gonna hook up the hard drive to an external system. I'm gonna reload Windows in there so that I can bypass all passwords. Then I gotta hook the hard drive back up to this original computer, so I'm still using all the components. Fingers crossed, I should be able to get into Windows, and what we can do in the meantime is we'll go and order another AM3 Plus motherboard so that when it arrives, I can just switch it out. Then we're still using all of the original components apart from the motherboard, which means I could still do all of my gameplay testing. I could still finish this project and then switch out the motherboard when it arrives. I think that's the best option. Let's see if it works. Okay, so I ended up using this PC to load Windows 10 onto this hard drive, which was previously working, but the SSD wasn't. And unfortunately, we are now getting the blinking cursor up the top right there, the same as the SSD. But I was thinking about this all night, guys, and something popped into my mind. I realized that this is an older system and this does not have UEFI support. It is a legacy BIOS. That would mean that it actually can't recognize a GPT formatted hard drive. And that's probably why the hard drive originally with the system was working, but the SSD wasn't. So if I put Windows onto the SSD as an MBR format, maybe that'll work. Let's give that a try. Okay, so we have fresh Windows installed. We're in disk management. So we're gonna right click properties, bring this down here. Then we'll go to the volumes tab and you can see right here that the partition style is MBR. So theoretically, we should be able to take this SSD now and try it in this system right here. Let's see if it works. All right, we may have made some progress. I actually loaded the BIOS file on the hard drive itself and it actually detected in the screen now. I have not been able to see anything in the screen. We finally found it. Let's see if the BIOS update actually fixes anything. Okay, so what I've been noticing is the BIOS keeps resetting by itself, but we managed to get the BIOS update done and now I've came into SATA configuration. I need to change from IDE to AHCI. And then fingers crossed with both MBR and then this change to AHCI, it should work. I hope. Oh, dude, what is going on? Okay, so that didn't work, but here's a list of things that we do know. So the BIOS, it sees the drive. The drive is partitioned as MBR. The SATA controller mode, it doesn't change the outcome, so either IDE or AHCI. The BIOS was updated. We know that Windows 7 boots fine on this system, and Windows 10 MBR does not. So that leads me to believe that it specifically could be the Windows 10 boot code playing up on a BIOS only motherboard. So here's what I'm thinking. If I try and install Windows 7 on the SSD, and then I force an update, that could work. So I'm gonna go ahead and try and install Windows 7 and see if that fixes the issue.
Well, Windows 7 is installed, but we have a new issue, guys. And I think this was the issue from the very beginning. The motherboard is now completely dead. I think that all of the issues we went through were because this motherboard was dying the whole time and just getting worse and worse. There was no way we were going to reach Windows. That explains why the USBs were failing. That explains why the hard drives were failing over time. Guys, please subscribe. Please make all this pain worth it. We still have the replacement motherboard on the way, so we will finish this system. There will be a part 2 to this. I'm not giving up on the system. But there is one more thing that I think will fix this issue, which I should have done from the very beginning.
Do you think it still works?